Hi, and welcome to the BizSec podcast. I'm Beau Woods, the host. I'm joined tonight by Dave Kennedy, my co-host. Dave, how's it going?
Good, man. How about yourself? Good to talk to you.
Yeah.
So this is big episode number one.
It is big episode number one. The first official episode where we actually talk about stuff that matters, not just talk about what we plan to talk about.
Yep.
So each episode we're going to try and bring information about the IT information security industry, things that really matter to business people, not just to the technologists. So Dave, what have you been up to lately?
Basically program maturity assessments, working with companies on building their security programs, as well as breaking into them, of course. But I've been busy, building a company and keeping things going and growing and having all that fun.
Yeah, I hear you. That's looks like you guys are getting really big, really fast, which is great news.
Yep, it's going great.
I heard somebody say that the IT security industry is going to grow 10 times over the next decade to be about $600 billion. How much of that are you going to take in?
Hopefully 599.
Yeah, leave some for the rest of us, man.
Hey, I left $1 billion in there. That's plenty. No,
that's good for me.
it's interesting because you see the industry itself. I mean, it's one of the fastest growing industries out there right now, and I mean, you kind of saw IT kind of stagnate a little bit, but security has just been growing because there's such a big need for it, and we're really still trying to find our way on how to protect ourselves. So I think it's going to definitely be a booming industry for several years to come, and there's no sign of slowing down anytime soon.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you said it really well. We're kind of still growing into our skin. We're trying to find out the things that we know actually work, whether or not those work, if there's new stuff, and all the while we're trying to adjust to any of the new changes that come on, like new regulations or new attack tactics, or just what the general business climate, technology climate, and global political climate is like.
Yep, I agree. It's going to take a while. It's going to take a while for us to figure it out, and we got some really smart people in the industry. A lot of people that are trying to change it, and I think we're definitely on the right track. It's just a matter of communicating the right message and doing the right things.
Yeah, and speaking of that, this past month we saw Cisco swallowed up a company called SourceFire. SourceFire, in case you don't know, makes intrusion detection software, as well as a host of other things. But they're best known for their Snort software. SourceFire is a company that had $223 million in revenues last year, and Cisco bought them for $2.7 billion, which, when I did the math, came out to about 12x multiplier on the revenue, which seems like a huge premium.
Yeah, that seems insane to me. I mean, if you look at multipliers in the technology sector, I mean, to me that just seems really, really, really high. And I mean, if you look at like EBITDA and everything else, I mean, it's going to take a lot to get that money back based on their current revenue model.
Right, and it's not like SourceFire is a new company; it's a startup, scrappy. It's been around for a decade at least.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I know for a while they weren't turning any profit. So the fact that they're doing $223 million is really good in revenue, but still, I think they got a long way to go to hit that to get their money back. Cisco does.
We were talking about this a little bit before we started the podcast, but you have to look at what they're trying to do with it and what their plans are. I mean, they're going to have to try to integrate it into their product lines, wouldn't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that that was said about the merger or the acquisition, it wasn't really a merger, is in the past you had point security products for everything. But right now the point security market is going down. It's moving towards a more integrated security market where everything's embedded in the things that you already have. And I think you're right. But the challenge to do that from Cisco's perspective is, how do you integrate it fully with your entire product lifecycle without ripping out the heart and soul of what makes that company good today at what they do?
Well, to that point, Cisco is actually one of the few companies that I actually truly respect and admire. There's not a lot of companies out there from a business standpoint that I really think try to do the right thing when it comes to security. I mean, a lot of it's always been just around the profiteering of vaporware. Cisco, on the other hand, I mean, I really have a lot of respect for them. I mean, if you look at their CSA product, which got discontinued, and that's still a sore point in my heart, but their product lines are actually relatively good. And if you look at, let's just take Cisco ScanSafe. Well, they bought the ScanSafe engine, what was it, 4 years ago, 5 years ago? And they did huge integrations into their AnyConnect client, made the AnyConnect client really that central module for the protection module. So, you look at, network access control and things like that all being integrated into the NAM module inside AnyConnect. I mean, they've really done a good job on the integration pieces, and they're really trying to get to that, taking all of their technologies and being able to consolidate them and move them into one type of platform. So I think that this may have been a really good move for them long term if they do it right.
Yeah, that's true. And they did the same with WebSense. They bought WebSense a while ago, and they haven't messed with it too much. They've just let it get better over time, and they've integrated it more tightly with their products. So maybe that is their plan. But going based on what they kind of said, where look, we need to have more things integrated rather than having specific products. I think they're planning to mess with the company and screw with things. But
just to clarify, WebSense was integrated into their product lines. Cisco didn't acquire WebSense.
Oh, okay. I thought they did, but that's just an example of me being wrong and corrected by somebody who's smarter.
Hopefully, I'm right.
Yeah. But I think that this is one, if you're a SourceFire customer, this is one to watch, to see what that vision really is and get to know what that vision is so that you can make smart buying decisions down the road and make sure that you don't end up on the bad side of things if the product does start to go away that doesn't fit with your organization anymore.
Yep, agreed.
After that acquisition happened, I saw a lot of other people talking about Checkpoint, Palo Alto, Fortinet, some talk about potentially them being big acquisition targets, and they might well be. So just keep an eye out if you're looking at those products, or if you have those products, make sure you know what that roadmap looks like, and make sure you keep your eyes out.
Well, speaking on other acquisitions, there was recently an acquisition with IBM and Trusteer, right?
Yeah. And if you don't know who Trusteer is a company that makes software. Primarily, they make endpoint software for banking customers' desktops. So when I'm a banking customer and I go to my online banking portal, the Trusteer software will be in my computer, and it'll check to make sure that I've got no malicious software on there, so that the banks can have a high degree of confidence that any transactions I do are not compromised.
Yep. Yeah, and I've actually taken a look at Trusteer, and I wasn't too impressed with the technology. There's actually a much better one out of Brazil called GAS, and they have a product line called GBuster, which does a lot of the protection mechanisms, and they actually have a really good one. But I was actually really surprised by this acquisition personally, and we kind of discussed this a little bit before the podcast, but I think them acquiring endpoint protection type solutions, and obviously for their banking customer side of the house, I don't know if that's IBM's real sweet spot in the market, nor have they really been strong on the security side, over the past few years. I mean, I can't think of an IBM product that I've ever used that I would use on security. I guess other than like IBM AppScan,
Yeah.
things like that.
Yeah, but I think if you look at Trusteer as more of a fraud prevention product, even though it does a security role for the end computer, it's really an anti-fraud measure by the banks. So IBM has a ton of big banks that are customers, a ton of small banks that are customers. And if they're going to integrate the point solution on the desktop, on the customer desktop, with some of their back-end analytics to be able to say, okay, this device is probably compromised, so let's give them a read-only session and not let them do any transactions. To 99% of the account holders, they're not going to see any huge difference unless there's a banner ad that says, your computer is compromised. You might want to look into that. But most of the account sessions that happen are not where someone is doing transactions. They're just checking their balance, getting on, seeing that their paycheck has been deposited. So I think that that's where IBM is going to leverage it, and I think that if they do it that way, that it's going to be a big win for everybody.
Okay. I'm skeptical on IBM just for the fact of prior acquisitions around Ounce Labs and the product line with IBM AppScan Source Edition, and you obviously they bought what was it, Watchfire, the AppScan product line there, so that became more on the rational side. So again, I'm a bit skeptical. I haven't seen a lot on the acquisition front go well, but hey, you never know. It could be better on the fraud side.
Yeah, and I think that it's kind of two different IBMs too. Sure. This one is the more mature one that, at least to me, looking at it from the outside a little bit, they seem to be better equipped to handle these things than their technology group and their technology security group specifically. Because you're right, they have killed a lot of really good pieces of security technology. But I got high hopes for this one. We'll see how it turns out.
Do it.
So each week, we want to have a kind of a theme to talk about in just kind of bring up a conversation and riff on that conversation. Typically fueled by some of the things we see in the news. That would be able to talk to business people, to help them understand the security challenges that they have at that level. This week, looking at a lot of the articles that we pulled up and that we've seen, we think that there's a really good story to tell and to talk about around unexpected sources of risk. Risks that you might not have been thinking about, but that you should at least be aware of. Even if they don't change your business behavior at all, you should know that they're there so that you can make informed decisions about them. So this is, we saw a lot this year at BlackHat that I think was that way, like medical device hacking. A lot of medical devices run on some kind of an embedded computer, whether it's running Microsoft Windows software, whether it's running Linux software, whether it's running some other type of software. It's running on a technology platform that is potentially open to hacking. Car hacking, again, as more cars start becoming more and more computerized and technologized, if that's a word, they are more open to people with the traditional hacking skills to come and break into those. Dave, was there anything else you saw at BlackHat, DEF CON, BSides, Passwords Con, which is a new one this year, that you thought kind of enters into that topic area?
Well, first of all, technologize is a dictionary word. So
good.
Kudos to you on that one. I looked it up because I was like, there's no way this is a word, so it's perfect.
It's also your Scrabble tip for the week.
Yeah, so you're much smarter on the word side of the house than I am. I would have totally said that was false. But no, I think if you look at it from a risk perspective, I think the theme at BlackHat was really around a lot of the consumer devices that we deal with on a regular basis. I mean, smart TVs, things like that. But there was also one really cool one that I thought was really neat, and it's been done before, but really not in this way. Was the iPhone hacking through a charger, and so basically, some researchers came out and they made a little device that looked like a charger, and when you plugged it into the wall, and then you plugged it into your iPhone, it automatically replaced some of your applications on your iOS device with malicious ones. They could start doing things like harvesting information from your Apple device, like about text messages, things like that. So it was able to essentially compromise it through non-jailbreak techniques, which was really unique and interesting. So for us as business folks, I mean, I particularly use Android just so I can customize everything on it. But folks that are the same type of attacks for Android are definitely doable. But as we go to let's just say we're business folks and we're going to airports, plugging these in to those charging stations that are out there, because we're always using our juice while we're on the plane and things like that, could actually subjectively hit you with a compromise and compromise your data and your mobile device.
Yeah, that's a great point. I know, in most of the airports they've rolled those things out, the little charging stations, and it wouldn't take a lot in a lot of those charging stations to pop it open real quick, drop a custom-made device in there, close it back up, and then it's ready to go, and you can start grabbing business people's stuff off of there. Or for that matter, on the planes themselves, a lot of times there's little chargers, and you've got sometimes 4 or 5 hours on that plane. If you're a malicious attacker, you buy a first-class ticket to a flight that's not well populated, where there's not going to be a lot of people on the flight. Maybe you open that thing up and tinker with it. I don't know. Some of that's a little bit kind of movie script hacks to me.
Sure.
But again, it's something that you should at least consider, at least be aware of, so that the next time you see a charging station, if you have the option to either plug it into the USB thing or to plug it into the electrical outlet one, then maybe you use the electrical outlet one. That's what I usually do. Even though if there's not an electrical outlet available, I'll plug it into the USB. I figure my risk is pretty low there.
Yep, agreed.
But that does bring up a bigger issue where there are a lot of things. You probably read the New York Times and Twitter and a couple other major sites were taken down this week by the Syrian Electronic Army. And the way that they did it was pretty interesting. They didn't attack those companies themselves, because the companies themselves have been attacked so many times. They've gotten used to it. They figured out how to combat that type of hacking. What they did is they went after the people who maintain the website lookup information, what's called a DNS entry or a domain registrar. And they were able to compromise one of the registrar, who is a third party, one of their reseller accounts, use that reseller account to then take control of the New York Times and Twitter's account with that registrar and change the lookup. So when you tried to go to Twitter, you ended up going to, I think it was a Russian site that was set up for it. So that's an interesting attack vector that I don't know anybody who's thinking about, well, let's see, are the third parties of my third parties' accounts locked down and secure? I need to know that, because otherwise I could get my domain taken over. But it's one of those things where it's a type of attack you would never think of, but it has been used now and it has been done now, and somebody else will copycat it.
Do you know how the initial entry point happened?
No, I didn't read about that.
Phishing, my forte. So
Yes.
there was a recent study I was part of an article on from CSO Online, and it showed that basically that there, no knowledge whatsoever of the person that's sending the email, have no idea what it's about. 30% of users will open it and click the links, or at least open the email. So it just goes to show you. I mean, we still are the weakest link when it comes to the human side. I mean, we will, no matter what you do, I mean, someone's going to click on something. That's why, we're not even close to being able to handle these type of attacks, let alone, the attacks of 5 years ago. This phishing stuff is so successful, so useful right now. It's just becoming one of those things where it's much easier for us to use phishing than it is anything else out there. Why spend, time, fighting your firewalls and web application firewalls and intrusion prevention systems when I can just call somebody up or send them an email?
Yeah, that's really true. That's one of those things that I think I've got my own ideas on why that's the case, on why organizations are still so vulnerable to it, and I think that it's because a lot of the people who are doing security and doing information technology, they're really technologists, right? So they always want to look for a technical solution to every problem, even if the problem is not a technical problem to begin with. And you start to have gaps. If you look at how much gets spent on, say, antivirus or firewall, or take any one of those technologies, versus how much is spent to, train employees to know that they shouldn't click on things, or to, to do those non-technical sides of things that really help out. If you take $50,000 out of the budget for antivirus and put it towards the budget for testing your employees on social engineering to make sure that the next time they see that link, they think, oh, this could be a social engineering attempt. I don't want to click on that because the other day somebody clicked on it and they got yelled at in a meeting, right? To just move even $50,000 around would be so huge in most organizations that it would drown the rest of the money that they're spending in awareness training, in compliance training, and in testing their employees on that side.
Yep. Yeah, and that's, for me, education awareness is still a very critical piece to that, and that's, that's not it's not a technology centric problem. It's very much a people oriented problem, and when we do security, we're really focused on this piece of technology or this device or this endpoint, when really we have to educate our users, and that's some of the most important things that I think you can get off in a security program. And for me, when I was the chief security officer of a Diebold, I equate almost all of my success of building a successful security program there to our education awareness program. And the reason being is it wasn't just fighting phishing and fighting attacks like that. It was promoting security and the reason why we were doing it. So we weren't that big brother. We weren't the ones that were coming in and locking everything down because of a certain reason. We were protecting them, and they really respected that. And a lot of our programs, we implemented stuff lightning fast. Like boom, we moved and we implemented it. We did it. And we were able to get our security objectives in, whether it was a business process or a policy or a piece of technology. All of those got implemented so much faster because of that education process.
Yeah, and I tell you one thing where I think we're kind of talking the same language here is when you look at organizations and their paper handling processes. There's no technology in the world that will deal with the paper handling.
Yep.
But as one of the stories that we pulled up for this week mentions, 96 to 98% of data incidents come from information on paper, not on computers. So, that shouldn't distract us from keeping the bad guys out of our computers, but you should just realize that it's really a bigger problem that you're trying to solve than just the stuff on computers. And I think healthcare has recognized this for a long time. I worked in healthcare for 3 years, and we had very clear objectives on, handling paper. All the paper records were kept in the medical records department. They were in locked file cabinets. Everything was locked down really, really tightly. At the nurses' stations and things like that, where you don't have quite as much security around the physical location, people, that was one of the big drivers for going to a more computerized process, and people didn't have to print those things out.
Right.
When they were, for downtime processes and things like that, you kept them in a drawer that was locked, and the head nurse had the key. So keeping a handle on your paper-based information or just non-computer-based information, it could be data on a thumb drive. That's a really common problem. It could be a laptop, something that leaves your facility, and maybe you lose it in a cab, or a mobile phone. I saw a study that said something like 100,000 mobile phones are left in taxi cabs a year in New York City, something like that, some ridiculously high number that I just couldn't believe.
That's crazy.
But those are also kind of ways that you could have, information security, information privacy, information compliance issues that you might not be thinking about today, but where you could probably get a good bang for your buck by just doing something like, hold disk encrypt your laptops, by putting some kind of a mobile device management software on your devices, by not letting people download attachments on their mobile phones, especially if it's their personal mobile phone. I'm seeing that more and more often as people try and get a handle on that information leakage issue.
Agree. I got nothing to add to that.
Well, there's 3 more stories that I want to talk about that are in this theme, and then we'll have some conclusions and some thoughts, and then leave you until next time. The first one is that some researchers were testing some of the 3G USB modems. Those are the little dongles that you put into your laptop that they'll connect up to the mobile network, and you can get your data from that. What they found was that by sending an SMS, a text message to that modem, which a lot of people don't realize, but those modems actually communicate with the uplink systems to get updates on which towers are near and that kind of thing. They talk over SMS, over text message, even though you can't really send a text message from those devices a lot of times. The researchers found that if they sent a special SMS text message to those devices, they could actually get access to your computer, which is really kind of scary if you think about it. They were able to, in the proof of concept that they did, they were able to put a text file on the computer, on the laptop that they were testing, that just basically proved that they got in. But
Well,
they said that it would be possible to launch any number of other types of attacks.
yeah, and I think at the if you look at like the Hacker News article, they were actually able to gain a interpreter shell or full access to the victim's machine through it as well.
Yeah, which, that's scary if you think about it, that you could just be using a USB modem and somebody sitting, across the globe, literally, could be sending free text messages to everybody in the, 404-555-0000 through 9999 USB modem range, and all of a sudden, maybe 10% of those people who are online, their computers are compromised. That's potentially pretty devastating. And I believe that the manufacturer of the particular modem that they tested has issued a patch for it.
Yeah.
But then again, how do you know that the patch is going to work? How do you know to go out and get the patch, download it, to apply it to your thing? It's one of those things where it's an attack vector that you don't normally think about, but that you should at least be familiar with.
Yep.
Second story that I haven't seen a whole lot of people talking about outside of kind of security industry and maybe certain developer forums is in Android there's a flaw in the random number generator. And without going into a lot of technical detail, which I don't really understand, the random number generator is one of the things that is kind of a core principle of doing security, especially with cryptography. On your mobile phone and on all computing devices. So anytime you connect to an SSL encrypted website, maybe your banking website, every time you have a certificate for a VPN, something like that, your system has to access this random number generator. And if it's not really random, then you have serious issues on the order of, what used to, with a true random number generator, might take 100,000 years to break this communication session. With a bad random number generator, it could take like 10 seconds to break the same type of cryptography. So it's a really big issue. It was originally discovered in some Bitcoin wallets, but it has a lot of effects potentially outside of just Bitcoin. I mean, it could affect everything. It could even affect the ability of your device to be protected with full disk encryption software on it, which is one of the best ways to prevent the kind of device theft or device loss we were talking about.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the issue itself, I mean, the actual attack was, supposed to be released at BlackHat, and a bunch of researchers, found out, ahead of time and actually published all the data prior to the release. And at the time, there hadn't been any flaws or any updates from Android, so it definitely put a lot of focus on a lot of issues that happened around it. So I mean, it was definitely a big deal. Just shows you. I mean, there's a lot of things that we're still learning. We're finding out, not just in Android devices, but iOS and others. That they are not perfect in any way, shape, or form, and there's a lot of different risks that are introduced from mobile devices.
Yeah. And so then the last story we have is around some of these internet-connected light bulbs. If you haven't heard about them, they're pretty cool. They're really multi-function light bulbs. So they can be any different color, any dimness that you want. They can go on at a certain time, off at a certain time. You can make them do strobe lights like you're in a club or something. They're all hooked into some kind of a light bulb hub. And when they're connected to
it's called the Philips Hue wireless lighting system.
Yeah, that one. And when they're connected to the hub, they get instructions from that smart device that tells them what to do. Should it be blue or green or dim or bright or flash or come on at 8 p.m. so that it looks like somebody's home, so that the criminals outside stalking my place think that I'm there. Well, what one researcher found is that bringing it back full circle, those types of devices are just as vulnerable to being messed with, tampered with, as anything else that's maybe a more traditional computing device. So the video is pretty cool. You might want to go check it out and skip to the part where every time he turns on the lights with the switch, the lights go off again immediately. And it's just this continual loop of he tries to turn the light on, it turns off. He tries to turn the light on, it turns off. That per se isn't a security risk. It's kind of funny to watch the video. But it does bring up the broader topic of, as we go towards this more connected world where our refrigerators, our toasters, our televisions are all plugged into the internet, or plugged into some technology device that can talk to them and control them, how does that pose potential issues? You know, could your Xbox Connect be spying on you secretly because somebody found a piece of malicious code that allows you to do that? Hey, it could happen.
Yep, and you know, if you look at, you know, like there's a talk that I did a couple years ago at DEF CON called pen testing over power lines, and it was showing a lot of the home automation systems that you could actually hack over the power lines, because they actually send communications back and forth through the power lines themselves, and you can manipulate that. And you know, I think you saw that again carried forward in the DEF CON BlackHat timeframe. There's a talk, you know, later on about hacking toilets that are becoming smart, you know, and how you could shoot water, you know, up from, you know, a remote location. I mean, you know, that's kind of you know, interesting one. But you know, this one specifically, I actually read the white paper, and you know, there's some really interesting things about them, and the vulnerabilities that they had. A lot of the vulnerabilities seem to be mostly on the iOS application side, where they basically left some information from the app on the device itself, which basically allows you to manipulate, you know, it as well. But it just shows you that, you know, security is really an afterthought on a lot of these product lines that we're purchasing, and it's not just for, you know, homes, things like that. It's definitely for the corporate side.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And so, kind of to bring some conclusion, I think, you know, the lesson that we want to get across, or the point of the topic we were talking about today, is don't just think about the traditional things that you know, maybe somebody else has told you this is the way that somebody's going to get in. Think about some of the side channel attacks, or the non-traditional ways, or, you know, put yourself in the mindset of somebody who wants to get your information. What would you try? How would you try and get in? You know, maybe you might know that there's a certain form that anybody who fills in this form automatically gets a tape drive sent to them with, you know, a certain amount of information on it, right? That's not a technology thing. That's a process thing. You know, I've got a theory that any hacking is essentially just a shortcut through the normal process to achieve a goal quicker or cheaper. Whether it's technology, whether it's process, whether it's, you know, finding a shortcut in the DMV line that lets you get to the front of the line without a little ticket at the front that you take, like your Baskin Robbins or whatever it is. Hacking is a process that acts on another process to just shortcut the normal processes. So keep that in mind with respect to your businesses as well, with respect to the things that you want to protect from other people getting or tampering with or shutting down.
I agree. And you know, from my side of the house, you know, I think if you look at a lot of the attacks that are coming, I mean, they're the same stuff that we've been talking about for year after year after year. It's just, you know, different types and different ways of doing it. You know, in the information security side, we really need to focus on really that strategy around protecting our environments and understanding what our environments are. I think some of our challenges that we face in the industry is really defining what makes the company money, those processes around it, and how to actually go and protect our assets. So, you know, for me personally, you know, these are cool and exciting things that we're seeing out there, but it just even more emphasizes what we really need to do to really try to protect our companies and really try to, you know, bring more of a working security program, you know, to the front.
Yep, good points. So for this week, this is Beau signing off.
Later, and this is Dave. Thanks for tuning in. Hopefully you catch us in the next one.
Yep. Bye.
See ya.